Hello. This presentation is meant to give you a snapshot of the work of the Planning and Oversight Committee for the BSEP and BERRA tax measures. My name is Natasha Beery and I'm the Director of BSEP and Community Relations for the Berkeley Unified School District. What are BSEP and BERRA? BSEP is the Berkeley Schools Excellence Program, most recently voted upon by taxpayers and voters in 2016 to provide additional funding for schools for a wide variety of specific purposes, and we'll get into that in a moment. And then we also have the Berkeley Educators Recruitment and Retention Act, known by its acronym BERRA, voted upon in 2020 for the purpose of increasing salaries for our educators and also targeting funds for recruitment and retention in hard to fill positions. Why do we need these tax measures? Well, in the state of California, we are not funded on a per pupil basis at the rate that other states are. Many are far above us. Most recently, we were ranked about 37 when adjusted for cost of living compared to other states. And that's an increase from where we were a few years ago, where we were at 44. So local voters have stepped up to provide additional funds. And in fact, they've been doing that since 1986, when the first BSEP measure was created. And there have been subsequent measures always to address specific purposes and approved by the voters, 1994, 2004, 2006, and most recently 2016. And as you can see, with a significant amount of voter support. These pie charts demonstrate the kinds of purposes that these funds are used for, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Here's an example. In the most recent vote in 2016 for BSEP, known as Measure E1, the purposes were about 2/3, 66%, going to a purpose known as high quality instruction. And what that does is provide for smaller class sizes by funding additional teachers. We lower our class sizes by hiring and funding teachers that bring us down substantially across the district. And that after we've approved those purposes and provided sufficient funds, we can also provide additional supports for teaching, such as in professional development, in program evaluation, classroom support, expanded course offerings. And then we have another purpose of funds that we call the Essentials for Excellence. And those are funds for our school site programs. Every school gets funding on a per capita basis to expend towards specific purposes and furtherance of their site plans. We fund all of our school libraries, staff, and everything in it. We have our music and VAPA program, especially the 4th through 8th grade program, instructional technology. And then we have another basket of purposes known as effective student support. Obviously, everything we do is student support, but these specific purposes have to do with targeted programs, for example, literacy coaches, also counselors. We've also funded family engagement supports. There are also funds from BSEP that go towards the oversight of these funds, so the BSEP office, communication, translation, other forms of community engagement, all funded by this very important BSEP measure. Next, we have the BERRA measure. This is a new measure created in 2020 to address a crisis that was affecting our students. And that is, we've been seeing many teaching positions go unfilled. 1920 was really notable for that. And part of the concern there is that our salaries were not competitive with area districts. Teacher salaries are already a concern nationwide, but even when compared with our neighbors, we were ranked number 16 out of 18. And notice that other districts were applying funds that we did not have available, such as what are known as concentration dollars from the local control funding formula from the state. And our BSEP tax funds are not available to increase salaries. So we went back to the voters and asked if they could help us support increased salaries and also strengthen our ability to recruit and retain teachers in hard to fill positions, knowing that ultimately our students would benefit by this strengthened workforce. And what the BERRA measure looks like, it's about $10 million per year, 95% of which goes to educator compensation. And then there's 5% of the funds that are directed to specific programs having to do with recruiting and supporting staff in hard to fill positions, special education being one of them. We are very fortunate to live in a community where our voters take pride in supporting public education. These are the two most recent poll results, voters agreeing with the statement that they were proud of the extra taxes that they pay for Berkeley public schools. But obviously those taxes come at a cost to our taxpayers, and we need to meet that faith and that support with strong oversight. And that's where the Planning and Oversight Committee comes in, and where we have structures in place in our district, beginning with the BSEP office, with a director, with a budget analyst, and a program specialist, as well as managers for each of the resources who are not only overseeing the programs, but accounting for the funds being expended. We keep our funds separate from the general fund. They are tracked separately, so we can ensure that they are directed to specific purposes. And then we have our Planning and Oversight Committee, our school site councils, the Board of Education, and independent audits that support this oversight as well. And in particular, the Planning and Oversight Committee. This is a really important body which has delegates from every school site, and we have them meeting frequently, about twice per month. They review plans that are brought by the budget managers. They also look at the budgets and make sure that they are accounted for. They look at reports for compliance. So how were the funds expended the prior year? They take a look at the audit, and they let the Board of Education know where there may be any concerns. Ultimately, the Board of Education has to approve these plans and accept the reports. And here's what it looks like across a calendar year. We get started in the fall, where we are right now, with elections for the Planning and Oversight Committee. The school site councils each elect delegates. You don't need to serve on the school site council to be a delegate from your site, but it's very important that every site be represented. And one of the first reports that we hear as the Planning and Oversight Committee is a report on class sizes to see if we met the goals that are spelled out in the BSEP measure. Then in December and January, we hear annual reports looking back on the prior year and noting what achievements were made with the funds that were provided, as well as any differences in the planned budget to what was actually expended. Then we take a look at the current year in what's known as the first interim. So for this year, 2021, we take a snapshot of our current expenditures and take a look at where the trajectory of expenses are going. After that, in the spring, we take a look at where we think the coming year will go. First of all, we need to look at our expected revenues. And one of the things that affects our revenues is what's called a COLA increase, cost of living increase, that is derived from the Bay Area Consumer Price Index. And that gives us some idea of what funds we might expect and how much we can allocate to each specific resource. Then we review the plans. And we do so with 2 readings of each plan. So the library plan, the music plan, the professional development plan all get 2 readings before they go to the board for approval. And here's what a distilled plan looks like. Here's an example for 2018-19. For the library at the time, the expected revenues were just over $2 million for that year. Most of the expenses are for staff. That's true for just about every program. And then specific amounts for purposes within that program for the collection here, the library collection, that means books, for example, would be accounted for here. And after we take a look at the overall budget, we also, of course, look at the specifics of the plan. What kinds of books are being purchased? What are the staff doing? And how much is going to be left over, do they think, at the end of the year? That would be your fund balance. Ultimately, what matters is, of course, what shows up in the real world. How do those library plans and those dollars directed to us from the taxpayers show up in our schools? Will they show up in the smiling faces of these kids? They show up in the books that they're holding in hand. Right now in the online world, they've got lots of support through BSEP and through BERRA to support our students. And you, as a potential member of the Planning and Oversight Committee, play a crucial role in ensuring that we are keeping the faith and confidence of our taxpayers, voters, staff, and students, that the funds are going where they are most needed. So thank you for listening to this, and I hope you join or at least attend a P&O meeting in the near future. We would welcome you. Thanks very much.